here you'll see on the, sorry, thank you, Sheila. Here's a QR code for the Angex homepage where you can find information about all our programs, et cetera. And we hope you will peruse our website and enjoy some of the resources that are there. As you heard, this webinar will be recorded and we will share the link with everybody after the recording is ready, and it'll also be on Anjec's YouTube page, which is Anjec Views. Please put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to you after the presentations. If for some reason we don't get to your question today, or you have a different question, maybe not about today's session, the best way to reach Anjec is to email us at info@anjec.org. That's monitored very often and much better than any other way. Some of you already are familiar with Anjec, but here's our board recently, last year or two, recently updated our mission to reflect the idea of making sure that we're engaging in diverse and inclusive practices throughout with leadership, partnerships, education, advocacy for strong public policy and support of environmental commissions in particular, public officials and communities throughout New Jersey. So thank you for all of that. Upcoming events, as you know, this is the first in a three-part series. The next two are coming on the next following Tuesday. So Tuesday, June 10th is going to be the second session on resilient landscaping. And on Tuesday, June 17th, it'll be landscaping for wildlife and habitat. We hope you'll join us for those as you've already registered. And again, you can find more information on other upcoming events as they become available using our QR code. As you know, Anjec, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and as we have municipal membership, so most of you, probably your commission is already up to date with your membership, but if they aren't and you aren't sure, you can email us at info@anjec.org, and there's a QR code that will also take you to our membership page for any information that you might need. Thank you for that. Okay. This is, well, actually, that's my end page, so I don't want to show that now. Sorry. You don't need to see that. Thank you. So I'm happy to introduce Taylor McFarland from New Jersey Sierra Club, who's going to be presenting tonight about artificial turf. So thank you, Taylor, for being here.
Perfect. And can you see the screen?
Yeah, can indeed. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Anjec, for having me and hosting this webinar. Again, my name is Taylor McFarland. I'm the Conservation Program Manager for the Sierra Club New Jersey chapter. The Sierra Club is one of the oldest and largest environmental nonprofits in the nation. We have about 3.8 million members nationwide. We do just about everything from conservation to clean transportation to fighting fossil fuel projects, and then, of course, getting everybody outdoors into nature. Really, after witnessing the significant increase in artificial turf development in New Jersey, I launched a Back to Grass campaign, collaborating with organizations like Anjec and dozens of residents across the state to find solutions that promote natural grass and really halt artificial turf development. Let's see. So this is just a snapshot of today's presentation. I'll briefly go over what artificial turf is, the environmental and public health impacts. I'll present an economic analysis comparing artificial turf with natural grass, introduce some pending projects we're fighting, and then finally end with how you can help. So what is artificial turf? It's a synthetic surface designed to resemble grass. It's used mainly in sports arenas, sometimes in residential lawns and commercial spaces. The artificial turf blades are primarily made of plastic, and the most common infill used is crumb rubber made from recycled tires. So this illustration shows the many layers of materials that are placed on top of the compacted subsoil, beginning with a geotextile barrier and followed by drainage stones and pipes, a leveling layer, a shock pad, and the plastic grass carpet. A layer of infill, usually crumb rubber, is spread on top of the carpet and in between the blades of plastic grass. So some of the environmental and health impacts of artificial turf. So a regular size artificial turf field contains 40,000 pounds of plastic. And each synthetic turf field loses about 0.5 to 8% of those plastic blades annually. So that yields about 200 to 3,200 pounds of plastic waste that goes into our environment, our waterways and so forth, and our oceans, of course. And the microplastics from artificial turf can be inhaled or ingested by humans and animals, potentially causing health issues. And these plastic blades contain harmful chemicals like PFAS that we all know is harmful to us and the environment because they're linked to numerous health issues, including cancer, immune dysfunction, thyroid disease, and cardiovascular disease. A regular size artificial turf field contains 150,000 pounds of crumb rubber. And that's, if you look at the diagram right there, that's what holds together the plastic blades. An EU report from 2018 estimated that 1 to 4% of this rubber infill needs to be replaced every year due to migrating off-site or compacting. If you've ever played on artificial turf, sometimes it always gets in your cleats or on your cleats. So it definitely migrates off of the field. And because of the size of the infill, it's considered to be a microplastic. And crumb rubber used in artificial turf can contain heavy metals like lead, zinc, and chromium. And they also pose health concerns through skin contact, inhalation, or ingestion when playing on these surfaces. Okay. So there are environmental concerns when the crumb rubber migrates off the field. These are photos from the Keller Field in Westfield, taken by Jean Lemberg from Westfield. The crumb rubber can leach into the soil and surrounding water systems as shown in these photos. And the most right photo, you can see that there are crumb rubber infill at the bottom of that catch basin. And on a warm day, synthetic turf radiates more heat than a plant-based surface, leading to extreme temperatures and contributing to heat island effect. Artificial turf can be 20 to 70 degrees hotter than natural grass. For example, on a 96-degree day, artificial turf can reach temperatures of up to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And these elevated surface temperatures have been shown to contribute to heat-related illnesses. So playing on these, as you can see in the picture to the right, playing on these synthetic turf fields can melt shoes, blister hands and feet, and induce dehydration and heat stroke. Consequently, climate change will exacerbate exercise-related heat stresses for athletes and people playing on these fields. So this photo was taken by Greg Lemberg at the same field where you saw the crumb rubber migrate at Keller Field in Westfield. This last June, taken at 2:27 p.m. The temperature outside was 96 degrees, but if you see on his gauge, the temperature on the field is 62 degrees hotter, coming in at 158 degrees. Yeah, let's see. This is the same day, same field. You can see on the left, the natural grass is as hot as the air temperature at 97 degrees, but the artificial turf field is just as hot as the asphalt, coming in at 145 degrees. So for high school athletes, the prevalence of extreme heat is leading to escalating heat-related illness, injuries, hospitalizations, and deaths. Heat stroke is the third most common cause of sudden death among high school athletes, behind cardiac arrest and traumatic brain injuries. 67 high school athletes have died from exertion heat illness since 1982. And according to the National Center for Catastrophic Sport Injury Research, 52% of those deaths happened in August, so usually during preseason, and 94 of those deaths were football linemen. So as artificial turf fields absorb energy from the sun, they form heat islands that become much hotter than the surrounding areas. This is the same field that you saw in the previous photos. This is Keller Field in Westfield. Artificial turf contributes to the heat island effect by significantly increasing surface temperatures compared to natural grass, leading to warmer urban areas due to its inability to evaporate water and cool the environment, essentially acting like another heat absorbing surface similar to asphalt, further exacerbating the already elevated temperatures in the city. So a synthetic turf field lasts about 8 to 10 years on average. Thousands of pounds of infill and plastic carpet must be removed and replaced at disposal. Mixed plastic waste, such as synthetic turf, is not recyclable using conventional methods. Therefore, they're typically sent to landfills where they remain for centuries. Sometimes turf is improperly, as you see, dumped outside of landfills, and it sits there continuously shedding microplastics, heavy metals, PFAS, and other toxic chemicals. Okay, so economic analysis. So because artificial turf only lasts 8 to 10 years, the long-term costs compared to natural grass are much higher. This analysis done by Greg Lemberg, who worked with the sports field manager on these numbers, show that over a 20-year period, an artificial turf field would cost $4.2 million more than having natural grass. There is also maintenance on artificial turf. This includes cleaning, debris removal, sanitation, and disinfection, infill replenishment, like I said before, grooming, and then monitoring for potential hazards. And this cost analysis does not include, removal. You need to pay to remove this turf field as well. I highly recommend, and the QR code goes right to this study. This is a study conducted by the Verona's Green Team, along with Montclair University and PSC&G Institute for Sustainability Studies. Last summer, they conducted a thorough study to determine the best option for their centennial turf field, which is reaching the end of its lifespan. They concluded that natural grass was more cost effective. It had fewer compounds that harm the environment and human health. It was considered safer, and even with the technologies that could help reduce the heat of artificial turf fields, it still did not decrease that heat to levels compared to natural grass fields. So I highly recommend, and I can send it, we can figure out how to send it to everybody. I highly recommend hovering over that. It's a great study that's very recent, just happened last June and right in New Jersey. Okay, so pending proposals. We're involved in a lot of artificial turf paddles as they tend to pop up everywhere, but I'll just go over a couple that we're fighting. So the first one that's currently on hold right now is a proposal to build 14 new artificial turf fields at Thomas and Edison State Park, which is actually owned by the National Park Service. It's a gigantic proposal. And what's even worse is that the park already has plenty of fields. So this is something that we're trying to stop. We've sent comments to the National Park Service. We're trying to stop this, but unfortunately, this is a very common thing that we're seeing. It's sports field complex and traveling sports fields complex. This is very popular in New Jersey, and this is just one of many that we're seeing. This is another proposal that we're fighting in Ridgewood, New Jersey. The village of Ridgewood wants to build an artificial turf field at the historic Shedler property. And just besides the environmental and health impacts, this location is completely inappropriate to have an artificial turf field. We did get actually some good news this past week. So since this site is on a historic property, the New Jersey DEP Historic Preservation Office has to weigh in, and they recently sent a letter to Ridgewood stating that the project would be an encroachment on the structure. So the Preservation Office gave the village some steps to take to redo its application, which is good news. It's a little bump in the road and helps delay the project a little bit. I did speak with some of the residents today about the next hearing. It's actually going to be rescheduled since the hearing was supposed to be on June 19th. So I'll keep you guys updated on next steps for that. But that QR code goes directly, it sends a message directly to the village of Ridgewood and the New Jersey DEP to reject the project. Okay, if you're a soccer fan, the World Cup is coming to East Rutherford, and since FIFA requires all World Cup matches to be played on natural grass, the MetLife Stadium will be converted to natural grass. The Giants and Jets actually will play on turf, artificial turf for their season, which is kind of a pity because who knows, natural grass may have helped them in their game as they need all the help they can get. But unfortunately, when the World Cup, FIFA Cup ends, there are plans to convert the stadium back to artificial turf. So this is a future project that we will work to lobby the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority to keep the natural grass. So this is a big project that we're going to work on to fight. Okay, and let's see what you can do. So educate people about the harms of artificial turf, the cost comparisons, and more. Major decision makers like school board of ed members, council members, mayors, school administrators are a great place to start. Help us pass moratoriums and or bans on the local and or state level. There are a couple of bills introduced on the state level, one that would ban artificial turf, and we are working on a bill that would prohibit the Green Acres program from funding artificial turf projects. We have calls, so you can also join our coalition. We have calls every month to discuss strategies and tactics for promoting natural grass. I lead the calls, and organizations like ANJAC, Beyond Plastics, Pinelands Preservation Alliance are on, along with environmental commissioners, local government officials, and residents from across the state. Let's see. Next steps, talk to a natural grass expert. Talking to a natural grass expert or bring them into a conversation with major decision makers is key. Keith Fisher spoke at our last webinar and debunked a lot of the claims that pro-turf supporters make. Bringing in natural grass experts and sports field managers in to take care of your grass fields is a huge part of this. They'll prove that with proper care, natural grass fields can have the same usage time as artificial turf fields. I highly recommend watching the Back to Grass webinar with Keith Fisher, and I'll somehow put a link in and information about that. And his contact information is right here. So feel free to contact Keith with any questions that you may have. And there are also immediate things that you can do right now. You can take action. So hovering over that QR code, you can take action, and that once you do that, that will send a message to your mayor, your council, and school board of ed members to support natural grass over artificial turf. And I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor. So I put some of the links in there. I think it was a little difficult. Some of the images were a little hard to, the QR code was challenging. So we've got the links in there for you.
Perfect, thanks.
So, and if people could go ahead and continue letting us know what your questions are. We're going to take all the questions at the end. And right now I'm going to do a short update on the situation with leaf blowers in New Jersey. So let me share my screen, which is all of a sudden not letting me do it. There we go. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Is that good? Great. All right, so welcome everybody, and thank you for coming this evening. Let's see, right there. So first, let's discuss what the issue is when we're trying to address here, when we're talking about restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers. Excuse me. So the first time I remember this being raised was when I lived in Maplewood, and the main issue was the noise issue. Maplewood is a close-in town to New York City, and our homes are all very close to each other. I could sit in my dining room and look next door and go, oh, they're having pizza for dinner tonight. So when the lawn crew comes in with 3 to 5 blowers on a patch less than a quarter acre, neighbors are definitely impacted. And this is also out of compliance with industry guidelines, which is to use 1 blower at a time. I've been chased from lunch in my yard or from a Zoom call on the patio when these crews showed up. And the argument is often that it's only for about 20 minutes, but because we all live so close together, I would hear the neighborhood crews going up and down the street and the street behind us. The sound of gas-powered leaf blowers is a low frequency sound and it travels much farther than the sound of electric blowers. The Hearing Health Foundation states that the decibel levels above 70 are considered harmful. I have used a decibel app on my phone and I've clocked crews at way over 90. The gas leaf blowers produce noise at 11 of 110 decibels. For comparison's sake, a jet engine from 100 yards produces 135 decibels. So before COVID, I often heard from neighbors that they didn't think it was such a big deal and they wanted their lawns all pristine when they got home from work. And then came COVID and we were all locked down and trying to enjoy our outdoor space if we had any. And once people were at home and living through it, their minds changed. So I'd also like to talk about, we talked about the noise impacts, but there are other health impacts. The two-stroke engines release a variety of deadly pollutants. So not only do you get chased inside from the noise, but also from the fumes. I used to be able to smell and of course hear inside as well as outside. And you can see this list of deadly pollutants that are going into the air from these leaf blowers. And then one impact that I bet many of you are aware of is the impact on wildlife. The pollinators in particular take a beating as they're often killed, but also their habitats are destroyed and their food resources impacted or blown away. The blowers can also blow away topsoil and mulch and contribute to erosion. Leaves and other decaying vegetation are an important part of the habitat that supports a diversity of wildlife. Overwintering insects seek out leaf litter or soft soil to burrow into. The hydrocarbon emissions produced during 30 minutes of work, like 1/2 hour of work, with a gas-powered leaf blower are about equal to the emissions from a 3,900-mile drive in a Ford F-150 SVT Raptor pickup truck. So that's farther than the distance from Trenton to past Anchorage, Alaska. And I could share the source on that if people are interested. A quick plug for our upcoming sessions. On June 17th, we will have Laura Rost from Bee City, USA speak to us about landscaping for wildlife and habitat. And also next Tuesday on June 10th, we will have a session on resilient landscaping, where you'll hear from Dr. Chris Abrupta from Rutgers Water Resources and our very own Executive Director, Jennifer Coffey, sharing their wealth of information. So if you're here, you are already registered for the series. So all you have to do is remember to Zoom in for the next 2 Tuesdays. So Maplewood began their pilot in 2016. So when they did that, they led with educational efforts. They had this event you can see on the left, the Future of Landscape Maintenance. They reached out to landscapers. They had multiple opportunities to test drive electric equipment. As you can see on the right, they had an eco-mower test drive. They would have it at Green Day, which was the annual Green Fair. They had a test drive on the lawn of Town Hall. And when people get to actually see the equipment and see how it works, it makes a big difference in what they're thinking about it. It's like when you think, oh, maybe I think about an EV, but I don't know if I want an electric vehicle. But once you have an opportunity to try one out and see how it goes, you think differently. So they had a lot of opportunities for people to learn about what the options are. So they had a pilot in 2016, and then in 2017, they passed their first ordinance, and it was a seasonal leaf blower ordinance. It was from, I think, late May until early September. They were sued by a group of landscapers, and they went back to update their ordinance. The first one, the original ordinance applied only to commercial landscapers. So the follow-up ordinance applied to everybody. It wasn't just to the commercial landscapers and letting residents do whatever they want. It was equal and across the board. So they updated that in 2017. And then in 2022, they updated it again and they made it a year-round ban. So now there is no time or day when you can use a gas-powered leaf blower in Maplewood. So a good resource is a guide on how to have a conversation with landscapers, and that was put out by ATLNJ, which is the Advocates for Transforming Landscaping in New Jersey. And I'll speak about them a little more later. But they have a guide about how to have a conversation because you think you're communicating, but sometimes you aren't. And they have this guide in multiple languages, but even if you're speaking the same language, you may not be communicating as clearly as you like. And so when you have this guide, It helps, and it also is something that you can leave with them, so you don't expect people to remember and take notes or what have you. You have your guide and your checklist. And one thing I would like to say is to remember to encourage landscapers to have to register with the township. That's something that Maplewood does and some other municipalities do, because then you have a list of who to reach out to and who you can communicate with. So here's some more towns with leaf blower ordinances. Montclair had a seasonal ordinance as well. And in 2023, they adopted a year-round ban, excuse me. So they were promptly sued. And in October of that year, the US District Court denied the plaintiff's order to show cause. They appealed, and the Third Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the ruling in December of last year. So that was a good result. Princeton. So Princeton requires landscapers to be registered, like I just mentioned, and to show a certificate of insurance, which is a good practice whether or not an ordinance is being pursued. They also took into account the financial hardship it can cause and had a fund for small landscapers. I believe it was for companies of 10 employees or fewer, whereby they could get financial assistance in purchasing new electric equipment. Glen Ridge passed an ordinance in late 2024 to ban gas-powered leaf blowers seasonally. And then Morristown. So Morristown Town Council did not approve a leaf blower ban, so they took it to the ballot box. And I'm going to read a quote here from the Daily Record. It says, Morristown voters appeared ready to approve a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers in town from January to September. The proposal had the support of 1,345 voters and 1,120 opposed, according to the preliminary totals. The Morristown Council failed to approve it, but agreed to put the questions to the voters in the fall. And so they took it to the ballot, and they now have a seasonal ban. And then we have South Orange. South Orange passed a seasonal gas leaf blower ban in 2022. And one thing to remember, and you probably noticed already, is that education and outreach doesn't stop once the ordinance is passed. People need reminding in various forms, and the wider the outreach, the better. You want to remind them, every year, not just have an ordinance and expect everybody to remember forever, but you have to have a lot of ways to communicate that. And there are a lot of different ways to share that message. So this was kind of fun. I saw that the Millburn Environmental Commission hosted a Millburn blow-off for residents and municipal leaders to determine which type of leaf blower is the best. Various brands of electrical yard equipment were displayed, and company representatives demonstrated them and explained how they work. So again, letting people see what the equipment is like, and having landscapers there, or having your Department of Public Works, it really makes a difference for them to see what the actual equipment is and whether it can do the job. And others are working toward it as well. So please drop information in the chat on municipalities that are interested in or are working toward an ordinance. So on the state level, we have NJS 217, which is sponsored by Senator Bob Smith, and it proposes to prohibit the sale and use of certain gas-powered leaf blowers. It passed through the Senate Environment and Energy Committee and has been referred to the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. And I'm not sure if any further movement is expected this year because we're in an election season, but we are always hopeful. And the companion bill, excuse me, A4666 was sponsored by Garnet Hall and Cleopatra Tucker. It's been introduced and referred to the Assembly Environment, Natural Resource, and Solid Waste Committee. And then I mentioned this group before. You may have already heard of it. It's a great coalition, Advocates for Transforming Landscaping in New Jersey. It's headed by Lois Krause and Peter Holm. They have regular meetings to share resources, share experiences and advice, and strategize on how to keep the state legislation moving forward. I highly recommend connecting with this group if this is something you want to pursue, or just if you want to learn about it while you consider pursuing it. They have a variety of resources to share, including a sustainable landscaping checklist that I mentioned in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So what you can do, here are our resources. We have at ANJEC a variety of brochures up on our website that are we made for, excuse me, for you to download and use yourself. So this is, you can see this here. This is the gas-powered leaf blowers, and it has about the issue. It has update on legislation and ordinances. It has a comparison of gas and electric blowers, has some fun facts, alternatives, and then more information on the back. It has a lot of information. It's easy to print up on 8.5 by 11 paper. And, you know, maybe you can go to your town hall, talk to the clerk and get them to make a bunch of copies for you. You fold them up, and when you go out to table and you want to discuss this with members of your community, you have something that they can take with them. And, you know, they could, you know, go into the resources that are on there and they can learn more about it. And it's also good if you're talking to your elected officials. It's a nice leave behind so they can think more about the discussions that you've had. We also have an article in the Andrick Report. We have the American Green Zone Alliance, has a lot of good resources. I mentioned before, Advocates for Transforming Landscaping in New Jersey. You could email atlnewjersey@gmail.com if you're interested, or you could just write to info@anjac.org and we can get you connected. Climate Change at Monmouth has a good section on leaf blowers. Healthy Yards has a good write-up on the equipment. And Quiet Communities is also an excellent resource for this. So that's the end of the update. And I'm going to stop sharing now, and then we can move into Q&A.
Thanks, Sheila.
Sure.
Terrific. Sorry.
Let's see.
I did want to, somebody from Berkeley Heights had mentioned, Taylor, that Shaw Industries claims that it recycles the synthetic turf. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. Yeah, I'm interested in learning how they recycle the artificial turf. Because it is very difficult because it's a mixed use. So I'd be very interested. I think someone else had asked, what did they do with the old artificial turfs? Sometimes you can repurpose, reuse them, but for the most time they are sent to landfills. But I'm very curious if you know how they recycle. I'm all ears.
Yeah, Rich, if you could share that with me, you know my email address, eritter@anjac.org, and I would share it with Taylor and we'll see what we can find out about it. Thank you.
I know that at one of our recent meetings with Taylor's artificial turf group, there was someone who I recall her saying, and I don't have all the details in my notes, but I want to learn more, that she had heard that where fields were being stored. So, you know, people say they're going to have it recycled, but then it gets shipped somewhere. And she went to a warehouse of some sort and could see, like, here's a turf field from Connecticut and here's one from New Hampshire. So I would be very interested to learn the reality of that proposition myself.
Yeah, yeah. And Taylor, I know you had replied to Rich about the significant use of chemicals and stuff on lawns, and so Taylor had and so the people could have data in front of them. We will email you guys some information about natural grass fields and the chemicals needed and not needed and stuff, and to that end to sort of help you in your argument against doing more artificial turf, because it's, yeah.
Yeah.
We hear that often, so.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I'm not a natural grass expert, but Keith Fisher, and he has organically maintained natural grass fields, and we can also share plenty of other examples too, because we want organically managed fields. We know that, fertilizers also are harmful, so we want to make sure that, all the alternative of natural grass, we want to make sure it's organically managed. So we'll definitely send you some examples of that throughout the state and in Maryland and other colleges that are doing that.
That's great. Hey, Sheila, do you want to look in the chat? Because I think there might be a couple of questions that got into the chat somehow, but
Or let's see.
thank you.
Let's see. Does sanitation of artificial turf result in a discharge of pollutants, excuse me?
Yes, it does.
So, and someone asked, why is there PFAS in the artificial grass? I thought PFAS is meant for water repellent purposes like stain guard or Teflon.
Yeah, so I answered that, and they're really
Oh,
helped like shape the blades of the grass. I wish that I looked when I was researching the artificial turf fields. There are several different types of blades, and the more expensive ones look more like grass. So the PFAS are used to really like shape the blades of the grass, and then ensure the molten plastic doesn't clog in the machiner.
And then
I
someone
say in the chat actually that somebody shared that Mantoloking has passed an ordinance that's going to take effect on June 15th. Commercial gas powered leaf blowers. Congrats. That's wonderful.
Yay!
Hey, whoever that is, I'm sorry, I can't read the name. Would you email info@anjec.org with that? If you could send us that ordinance, we'd love to have it on hand to share with other towns, because sometimes that's a great way for a town to get one passed if that they say, hey, look, our neighbor over in Mantoloking did this, see how great it is, and it often helps. So thank you. If anybody else has ordinances that we didn't mention and you can send them to us, that would be great.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
I can, sorry. Oh, sorry. I can expand because I know Allison had asked any effective debunking arguments. I think the cost comparison, that's like a bipartisan issue, like money talks. So I think definitely showing the comparison of the what I had showed you over the 20-year period. Since artificial turf, it's really it's only from 8 to 10 years is the lifespan. So showing that, and then also just the heat impacts too. If you watch the webinar with Keith Fisher, he'll debunk a lot of things where, it's usually the sports coaches when I testify at council hearings and stuff, it's a lot of the sport coaches saying like, hey, it rained this day and our kids and players can't play. Keith debunks a lot of that and goes step by step on, how to avoid it flooding and, using sand and different things. And honestly, it's just maintaining it well, and having somebody to do that is really, really important. And I've seen that the knowledge of how to maintain a field effectively is not there sometimes when I'm testifying. And the artificial turf industry is huge. They have a lot of money, so of course they're in the game. But I think it's really important to have someone like Keith or a sports field manager to just help maintain those fields. And it only costs about $75,000 for that one person. So the town overall in the long term would be saving a lot of money. So that's just one thing that I've seen, but definitely in terms of the natural grass and flooding and more of that technical stuff, I highly recommend watching the webinar with Keith Fisher.
So let's see, someone else says one of the largest sod suppliers in the Northeast is in South Jersey. So it's in our state's best economic interest to support these farms and discourage fake grass. And I remember being at an event I think it was for Keep It Green, and the head of the Department of Agriculture anyway, the Commissioner of Agriculture was there and talking, very proudly about the sod industry in New Jersey and how they're working with, FIFA because for the World Cup. And so we're lucky to have that resource right here. So that would be great.
Mm-hmm. I think someone had asked about an ordinance with residential banning residential artificial turf fields, artificial turf. Cape May last May, I think, passed an ordinance that prohibits landscaping, like artificial turf landscaping. So if you're looking for an ordinance, I would definitely check out Cape May because they passed one last May.
Yep. Somebody from Cape May is on and they shared that. That's right.
Oh,
Regulating
great.
the use of artificial turf, which prohibits use for landscaping in visible yards with some exceptions.
Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah, if you could, oh, actually, that was you, Taylor. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
okay.
TM, I'm like, who's that? Anyway, if anybody has that one, we can reach out to them too and see. We can figure it out. But yeah, thanks, Diane.
There's a link in there also in the chat where fields from New Hampshire were stored in a New Jersey warehouse. It was a Boston Globe article.
Oh yeah.
About artificial turf not being recycled.
Thanks, Amanda. And I realize that my slides may have been blurry, so I can send over in the follow-up email like a PDF of the slides for everybody to have. Apologies about that. It looked good on my screen, but obviously not for everybody else. So we'll send over a PDF so you can see all them clearly.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah, we'll share when we share the recording and other resources. Everybody, we will share you Taylor's slides as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looked fine on my end too. So some of the computers maybe, who knows? Zoom and its many faults. I think we got all the questions, Sheila, maybe?
Did we get examples of artificial turf ordinances? Did we get to that one?
Yeah,
The-
that was,
yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah. And if we hear of others, we will definitely share them with everybody.
I think Johanna said she's surprised to see equal cost for stormwater for turf. Yeah, the reason for that is that every time you have to replace artificial turf, you have to redo kind of the stormwater system. So that's why it's so high. And you know, the maintenance cost is a little bit higher for natural grass, but over the long term, I mean, you do have to do maintenance, like I had said in my presentation, for artificial turf. But obviously, over the long term, you don't have to replace natural grass every 8 to 10 years. So that is why the cost is so high for artificial turf over the long term.
All right, is that it? Do we have anything else? Let's see.
I think so. That's
I think a bunch of
wonderful.
things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I can now show my slide that I didn't show you before.
Well, drum roll.
Oh, but first I have to share, sorry. I don't know if I can share anymore though, Sheila. Oh, I can. So what we're gonna do now is leave the screen open so that you can get anything you might want from, keep the Zoom open so you can see any links or anything you might want from the chat. We'll keep it open for a few minutes. We'll stop the recording, Sheila, and then we'll stay on here for a couple of minutes if you want to grab anything out of the chat, all the links. So, but thank you all for attending. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, Taylor, for your
Thank you guys.
expertise, and Sheila, of course, too. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.